70%. That number was published by Gartner, confirmed by McKinsey, studied by MIT Sloan for 3 years. 70% of artificial intelligence projects in mid-sized companies fail before they reach 6 months. We're not talking about startups that ran out of budget. We're talking about companies with 100, 200, 500 employees, with committed executives, with recognized vendors, with real investment, and still, they fail. Why? It's not the technology. The technology works. It's something much harder to detect and much easier to prevent if you know where to look. In the next 12 minutes, we're going to break down the 3 factors that kill AI projects before they generate a single dollar of return. With real cases. With the numbers nobody puts in vendor webinars. And at the end, I'm going to give you the exact checklist used by the companies in that 30% that actually works. Stay with me, because the first factor is the one that hurts the most to admit. Let's put the data on the table. In 2024, Gartner surveyed more than 2,000 company executives about their AI projects. The result was uncomfortable. More than 68% reported that their AI initiatives had not met initial objectives in the first year. McKinsey went further. In their 2025 global survey, they identified that only 23% of companies had managed to scale AI beyond the pilot phase. Scale, that's the key word. Many companies get a pilot to work. They celebrate. They make a presentation to the board. And then, the project dies quietly. No scale. No real impact. No ROI. And what does MIT Sloan say about this? Something few people want to hear. 90% of the causes of failure are organizational, not technical. 90%. It's not that the AI model doesn't work. It's not that the vendor failed. It's that the organization wasn't ready to receive it. And this has 3 concrete manifestations, 3 factors that appear again and again in post-mortem analyses of failed projects. Let's start with the first one. Factor 1. The misalignment between IT and business. This is the silent killer of AI projects. Here's how it works. The technology department implements an AI tool. The tool is technically correct. It works exactly as the vendor promised. And the sales team doesn't use it. Or the operations team uses it wrong. Or the finance department keeps doing the process by hand because it's faster this way. What happened? IT and business never spoke the same language from the beginning. IT asked, "What data do we have? What infrastructure supports this? Which tool is technically superior?" Business needed to be asked, "What real problem is costing you money today? How much time does your team lose on this process? How do you measure success in 12 months? There's a case that illustrates this perfectly. A 300-employee distribution company in Ohio implemented an AI system to optimize their inventory management. The project cost $400,000. It took 8 months to implement. 5 months after going into production, the system was disconnected. Why? Because the warehouse team was never consulted during the design phase. The system made automatic restocking decisions that ignored the seasonal patterns the team knew from experience. During peak season, the system generated stockouts that cost more than the savings it supposedly produced. IT implemented what was technically correct. Business needed something different. Misalignment isn't a lack of communication. It's the absence of a structured alignment process before writing a single line of code or signing a contract with a vendor. The companies that overcome this factor do one thing differently. They create what's called an AI steering committee before starting any project. A committee with representatives from IT, the affected business area, finance, and human resources. Not to approve budgets, to define together what problem is being solved and how success will be measured. Wait, because the second factor is more subtle and more expensive. Factor 2, miscalibrated ROI expectations. This is the one that kills projects the fastest. Here's how it works. Someone in the company reads an article saying AI can reduce operational costs by 40%. They bring that number to the budget approval presentation. The board approves based on that promise. 6 months later, the real reduction is 12%. Is that a good result? Objectively, yes. 12% reduction in operational costs in 6 months is a solid return. But the expectation was 40, so the project is perceived as a failure, and it gets canceled. This isn't hypothetical. Harvard Business Review documented this pattern in 2024 as one of the 3 main reasons AI initiatives get canceled in Fortune 500 companies. The problem isn't the tool. The problem is the number someone wrote on a slide with no methodology behind it. So how do you correctly calibrate AI ROI before you start? 3 steps, without exception. First, define the actual current cost of the process you're going to improve, not the approximate cost. The real cost, measured in hours per week, multiplied by the team's hourly rate, plus the cost of errors that process generates. Second, don't use the tool's best-case scenario as your reference. Use the 50th percentile of results documented by other companies your size and sector. That data exists. The best vendors have it. If they won't give it to you, change vendors. Third, add a transition cost of 20 to 30% on top of the tool cost. Training, process adaptation, initial resistance, technical integration. It always costs more than expected. Always. With those 3 inputs, you have a conservative but defensible ROI. One the board can approve without creating impossible expectations. 12% actual against a 12% projection is a success. 12% actual against a 40% promise is a cancellation. The difference is the starting number. But what comes next is the factor nobody wants to discuss in post-mortem analyses, because it points directly at people. Factor 3, internal resistance that doesn't get managed. And this is where most analyses get uncomfortable, because it means admitting that the biggest obstacle to AI in your company isn't technical. It isn't financial. It's the people who already work there. And not because they're bad people, but because nobody explained to them what was going to happen to their jobs. Resistance to technological change in mid-size companies follows a predictable pattern. First comes indifference. That's an IT thing. It doesn't affect me. Then, when the implementation starts affecting them directly, comes active skepticism. This is never going to work the way they say. And if that skepticism isn't addressed, it evolves into passive sabotage. Processes that keep being done manually, just in case. Data that doesn't get entered correctly into the system. Error reports that get exaggerated to justify going back to the old method. They don't do it with bad intentions. They do it because they're afraid, and nobody talked to them before it started. McKinsey identified in 2025 that 62% of AI projects that failed due to internal resistance had included zero change management program in their initial planning. 0. Not a mediocre program. 0 program. The companies that solve this factor do something simple but rare. Before selecting the tool, they involve the teams who are going to use it in defining the problem, not in the technical selection, in the problem definition. How many hours a week does your team lose on this process? What part of your work feels most mechanical and least valuable? If you could eliminate one repetitive task, which would it be? Those questions have 2 functions. The obvious one, getting real information about the process. The less obvious one, making the team feel the solution is theirs, not imposed from above. A team that helped define the problem rarely sabotages the solution. There's a financial services company in Canada that implemented an AI system for compliance automation in 2024. Before selecting any tool, they spent 6 weeks interviewing the compliance analysts, documenting their frustrations, their shortcuts, their manual workarounds. 12 months later, the system had a 94% adoption rate, the highest documented in that sector. Not because of the technology, because of the 6 weeks of conversations before starting. And here, we reach the moment I promised at the beginning. 3 factors. 3 verifiable causes. 3 concrete solutions. Let's summarize them. Factor 1. IT and business misalignment. The solution. An AI steering committee with representatives from all affected areas, formed before evaluating any tool. Factor 2. Miscalibrated ROI expectations. The solution. Calculate the real current process cost. Use the 50th percentile of documented results as your reference, and add a 25% transition margin. Factor 3. Unmanaged internal resistance. The solution. Involve teams in defining the problem, not just in the training that comes after. None of these 3 things costs extra money. None requires an external consultant. They only require time and structure before you begin. The companies in the 30% that succeed don't have better technology. They don't have bigger budgets. They have these 3 processes running before they sign the first contract. Write me in the comments which of these 3 your company already has in place. I'm genuinely curious to know where most of you are. In the next video, we're going to go much deeper into Factor 1. How to structure that AI steering committee exactly, what questions it asks in each meeting, and how it turns disagreement into alignment. If you don't want to miss it, you know what to do. See you next week.